So when the term sunnah is used amongst the muhaddithin, they actually say that the sunnah is all of that which has been narrated from the Prophet ﷺ. Anything narrated from the Prophet ﷺ, anything at all, whether it was in the beginning of his life, in the end of his life, whether he said it, whether he practiced it, whether it was a tacit approval, whether it was in the physical features of the Prophet ﷺ, the length of his hair, or the size of his beard, or the shape of his nose, or how he used to walk. They use the term sunnah synonymously with hadith. So if you read their books, they will say to you, this has come in the sunnah. That's what they mean. However, the fuqaha, they differ with this. They say that hadith doesn't necessarily mean that we have to practice this. And they say that when the Prophet ﷺ, he said that hold fast to the book of Allah and my sunnah, what he meant was hold fast to my way of teaching, like the way that I teach. I've taught the religion, which includes all those categories that I mentioned earlier on, all those categories. But the sunnah that the fuqaha are dealing with is only those two categories that were in red. And then the usul fiqh scholars, they are the ones that actually say sunnah is the sayings, the actions, and the tacit approvals of the Prophet ﷺ. So now we've kind of like understood, okay, when I hear the term sunnah, I understand why people might get a bit confused. For example, like doing cupping. You guys know what cupping is, yeah? So this practice of cupping, wet cupping, and bloodletting, this practice, what would the fuqaha call this? Would it be called sunnah or not? So fuqaha would generally say this is not sunnah. It's a practice that was done in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, but it wasn't done, it wasn't adopted way in the religion. It was an adopted way, like for example, walking on the street in Medina was an adopted way, but it wasn't an adopted way in the religion. So if it's not in the religion, then you're not going to call it sunnah, right? For example, Sahaba slept. Is sleeping sunnah? No, it's an adopted way, but it's not adopted as seen as being part of the religion. It's just a normal, natural human sort of action that people do. So when it comes to the sunnah, the fuqaha dealing with the sunnah, this is what we learn, right? So it's a very sort of like, we narrowed it down to a very specific type of practice in